We're now recording. Now, this is the 30th of March 2007, and I'm talking to Mr. Pran Nath Jalali. I'm sorry, let me make sure I get it right.
Pran Nath Jalali.
Tell me when you were born.
I was born in 1928, on December 28th.
And tell me about your background.
Well, the normal background of a Kashmiri boy. I started from a school called Church Missionary School, which was one of the best there.
In Srinagar?
In Srinagar. Even if you're a missionary boy, you are something different from rest. In terms of your commitments, social commitments, other things. And I still feel proud of having my principals, Mr. Eric Bisco, and the old Bisco also.
And your father was working in what
postal services. He was in the post office.
And you were a Kashmiri-speaking boy?
Yeah, very much Kashmiri-speaking. And what else? Well, the only thing that I have of you might say people remember a lot about having achievements. My achievement is to be a boy from missionary school. And that you will find something distinct in Kashmir. You meet mission school boys, you will find them all in good place in the sense crucial places, and doing well.
So you were born in late 1928, but you were just mentioning that you became involved with the communist movement in the early 1940s. You were very young.
41 to be precise. And then in 42, officially I got attached to Communist Party. I ran away from my home to join the first study cycle, they call it, which was held in Kashmir on a lake, Dal Lake, you must have seen it. It was in a boat called Dunga. We had the first schooling of the communist ideology in that Dunga. And the teacher was from Lahore, a revolutionary who had met Lenin.
Who was that?
Fazl-e-Ilahi Qurban, who later defected. Defected in the sense he took to... I think he did the right thing. He joined the official labor union.
And who else was there on that boat?
We were about, I think, 14 of us, mostly students.
Mainly Pandits?
No. There are Pandits, there are Muslims. And you will be surprised, the two of them were brothers, and Bakshi Ghulam Abdu became the Chief Minister of Jammu and Kashmir after 53 and had a very leading role in the whole freedom struggle. And actually it was Bakshi and Ghulam Sadiq together who sponsored this school. And, there's a story behind it, why they did it, that's a different thing. But they were the people. And you'll be surprised to know the first secretary of the communist unit in Kashmir was Bakshi Ghulam Ahmad. And the first conference of communist unit was held at his residence in Khankai Sokta. But that association of Bakshi lasted for a few months, so he dissociated himself completely from the communist.
And when did Baba Bedi come on the scene?
Bedi came somewhere in 43, 44.
A communist?
Yeah, communist. He was, in fact, deputed by Punjab Party, Punjab Communist Party, to look after the communists in Jammu and Kashmir.
So in 44, how many communists were there, say, in Srinagar?
Well, 44, good number.
What, 20, 30?
20, 30 who were sort of giving their whole time to the party activities. But there are a good number of sympathizers, many among students, and they had made inroads into the trade union movement. Say, for instance, there was very powerful trade union was Silk Factory Workers Union, Then there was another, and by 45, 46, they controlled the whole student movement, which was the most important sector of national conference movement in Jammu and Kashmir.
So the communists were working within the National Conference?
The National Conference. They did not raise their hand that here we are communists. Except that everybody knew that the communists. Even Sheikh Saab knew. He didn't like it, but it was just nowadays.
So it was entryism?
What do you call it?
But it was the communists as a matter of policy, working within the National Conference, but not publicly disclosing their communist allegiance?
No. Publicly, of course, the communist allegiance was there. There was no ban as such. But we're cautious enough not to rub Sheikh Saab on the wrong side, because he was very sensitive about any parallel political activity. Right.
When you were a teenager and active in the communist movement, what was your view of Sheikh Saab?
Well, there are two things. You see, when I joined the communist, there was already this controversy with the left about the role of Sheikh. The general view which was popularized by Pran Nath Jalali, was the first left-leaning intellectual in the National Congress, was that Sheikh was an authoritarian, an incorrigible authoritarian, and there can be no compromise with him. But our view was different. Sheikh was authoritarian in an area with the type of backwardness you have there, especially confronting a Muslim mullah-led movement. He had to adopt that type of approach, which was not communal, which was, his idiom was Islamic. If he used to address a public meeting, from A to Z it was an Islamic idiom. He would recall the Quranic precepts, then about the history of Islam, the Sahabas, but all with an emphasis on that humanity is one. Quran says we're one. There's no difference between Hindu and Muslim. It was that type of approach. And then it was oriented towards raising the life of downtrodden, especially the peasantry.
Did you hear him speak often?
Yes, every speech, each speech he made, I had to be present. Because I was a good singer, I should say. So before he would start his meeting, he would invite me to sing the patriotic song. The meetings would begin with that.
Can you remember the song?
Song? Yeah, now I can't, I'm too old, 80 years, plus my mentality is... Well, if you like, I can sing a
snatch.
This is, in Kashmiri, is one of them. Voloha Bhagabano no Baru Shan Paida Kar Gulantai Bulbulan Amdar Novisa Man Paida Kar. This is calling on the Bulbuli. Come, let us create a new spring. And you go on speaking unhesitatingly.
A national conference song?
It is a song from one of our national poets, Mahjur, but adopted by National Conference. It was a very popular song because it talked of awakening. So, and how important it was to express yourself.
The Naya Kashmir Manifesto and the turn to the left, is that communists?
Yeah. Communists, yes.
The communists did it?
They did it. It was Punjab Communist Party who drafted the thing.
Who?
It was actually a group of people, but mainly BPL Bedi people. Because there was not much drafting to be done, except to write the introduction. It was almost a carbon copy of one of the, these Soviet republics, Central Asian republics. if you see that and compare it today, you'll see there is a lot of result in terms of charters, of workers' charter, women's charter and all. That way it suited. There was no controversy. The only thing was the introduction, which was written on behalf of Sheikh. And Sheikh's, where he praised Yosar as the Deccan line and things, all that.
So who wrote the introduction?
Introduction, Bedi. It was done under the supervision of Dr. Adhikari, who was the ideologue of Communist Party of India. But the drafting was done by Bedi. And actually it was present because National Conference wanted to present a memorandum to Maharaja. And Maharaja had just come from the war theatre to Srinagar, so it was his first tour of the city, although he would hesitate. But National Conference had given him assurance that we will support your visit. And he got a very good popular reception. Then he passed through the headquarters of National Council, Majalmand, and it was presented to him by Sheikh as a charter for what he would implement, Maharaja Hari Singh. So he received that, that's all. But that became one good thing, that it became a rallying, cry later. Especially the one chartered regarding farmer peasants, where it said that land would belong to those who till it. And it was that way an anti-feudal program. The rest of the things, of course, there were no industries worth the name in Kashmir, so there was no question of having a workers' charter and things like that.
And the symbol of the plough on the red background?
You see, this plough on red background was finalized at a conference when the Muslim conference got converted into national. That was 1938. And incidentally, the whole thing, this symbol, was finally decided by a Hindu delegate. Because there was one allegation by Jansangh, by Partition in Jammu, that this flag is a separatist Islamic flag type of thing. And yet they had no objection to bowing before the Maharaja's flag, which mentioned very boldly Inder Mahinder Separate Sultanate English. That is, this is Inder Mahinder Maharaja Hari Singh Bahadur and all. Who is Separate Sultanate English? That is the spear of the British Empire. And so they extolled that flag, but this they wouldn't like. And this flag was finalized. There were a number of, suggestions about the flag, color, what should be there. So finally it was decided that it should have red background. And this plough, symbolizing the, not unlike the Communist Party flag, that is Skir Rahman. Predominantly it was a peasant state, peasant was the majority, so peasants all, the plough.
The Quit Kashmir campaign, were you involved in that?
Yeah. In fact, I was one of the, there was a war council set up that was to lead the movement after Sheikh's arrest. With 22 members. I was there on behalf of the students, I and another student colleague of mine. But that carry, so I was one of the first to go to the arrest. In fact, the first. Because the orders were from the government that anyone who dares to address a public meeting in defiance of these orders will be shot at and his property confiscated. So there was a threat of a collapse a moment because not many came forward. So we had to take a decision what to do. So I was asked to lead the thing. And strangely enough, I addressed a public meeting at a Muslim shrine. That is, you have been to Kashmir, Hazrat Bal shrine. And I remember when I was speaking, we used to call those who would quote us as dictators. So when I got up, there were troops ready around the thing. But they didn't fire, nothing of it, so I was arrested.
And how long did you spend in detention?
Well, that was in May. I got arrested, and next September.
46?
47.
47.
46, I was sentenced to 3 years rigorous imprisonment and fine. Then I given an order to be detained for the rest of the period. With about September next year, I was released. In the general amnesty.
Same time as Sheikh, sir?
Same time. In fact, I think day after Sheikh was released.
What was the mood like in Srinagar when the Sheikh got out of detention?
Oh, it was upset, jubilation at his release. Then, but there was an air of concern all around because of the happenings elsewhere in Pakistan. The country there was a fratricidal war, but somehow Kashmir escaped that fate. That was the one good feather in had to shake up the law. It was because of Sheikh's presence. And 47, then things changed quickly. And there was a threat of communal polarization. So in response to that situation, Sheikh called for a first peace brigade. And,
this was after his release from prison?
After his release from prison, he made a very important, significant speech. And that was the official position of National Conference. That is, he called upon Pakistan to come to a conference table and support our freedom struggle. And after the attainment of freedom, let people of Jammu and Kashmir decide which way to go, Pakistan. Sorry. The slogan was that freedom first, accession later. But Pakistan did not accept that plea.
But tell me about how you enrolled in the volunteer movement.
Well, you see, as I told you, there was a rapid change of moods and things. And there was apprehension. So then there was the attack. And we had information about this preparation right from June itself. In fact, we were the first to know because of our links across. And instantly, the first person who spoke against the raid was the person who had organized these forces across in Azad Kashmir. He was the head of the this Muslim, what they call that, I forgot that. This was the main armed force.
The Muslim League National Guards? Or?
National Guards, yeah. And he was from Bagh, and known called Captain Akram. He was a good friend of mine. I had lived in Punch for about 12 years. I know all of Punch, especially Bagh. So he was very close to me. He was also arrested with the Muslim Guard who were brought from Punch. So it was through him we came to know, because he was connected with the Communist Party. Just vague, you see, he had taken part in Royal Indian Mutiny, the Indian Navy Mutiny, and found shelter in the Communist Party headquarters. They had just watched P.C. Joshi's lifestyle, so that had impressed him most. So he thought that he was also a communist.
So did you know Sardar Abdul Qayyum Khan in Punch?
There were two Sardar Abdul Qayyum Khans.
There was the one who was the chief minister of the frontier province,
yes.
But there was the one who was one of the leaders of the Punch revolt.
No, I didn't. I knew Qayyum Khan in a different capacity. I spent quite some time in Punch, especially in Bagh. And Qayyum Khan was one of the Muslim Conference functionaries, not very much known. But as 47, 46, the significant role for Pakistan was played by this Qayyum Khan. He was, people don't remember that he was the deputy leader of Congress Legislative Party in the center. And he spent most of the time in Srinagar, away from Congress politics. That is, he didn't go to rest during Quick India movement. And finally he defected to the other side. But he was working probably the link, one of the important links in the chain of intrigue.
Now, which Qayyum Khan is this exactly?
The one who became finally Frontier...
the one who became Frontier Chief Minister?
Chief Minister. He was the one who was organizing these raiders and all. And incidentally, Qayyum Khan was a Kashmiri by descent. He was a landlord also. He used lands in Partition and all.
So how did you join the volunteer movement?
Well, I didn't join. I, in fact, organized the volunteer movement. I'll tell you what happened. When the attack came, there was what to do about it. So we discussed the matter with Sheikh. And he was extremely worried. He said, well, because he knew what was the final objective. And we knew what was, they wanted to take over Srinagar. In fact, when we were in the prison, we knew the intrigue. There was some sort of agreement between R.C. Kak, who worked on the residents' perception of Kashmir. He was very much, I have his documents, letters, which clearly indicate that he wanted to annihilate National Conference movement. That was perhaps his assignment. He thought that it was some sort of a Russian-sponsored movement, which was probably an excuse built to suppress the movement. But he didn't succeed because of Gandhi. So we had discussed, I told you about call for building a voluntary corps called Peace Brigade to maintain communal peace. But now this was not enough. So he said what to do. No, he gave the call. There was just a Eid meeting. And we discussed his speech with him. He said that unless you make it a two-sided thing, that is, you yourself said freedom first, and so freedom must come as a concrete shape. Then alone defense becomes, and our volunteers force will have some meaning. So what to do? Is it that you give a final call for liberation and ask people to fight the battle with arms? So till then it was a non-violent movement and all. It actually gave a call for arms that asks wherever you have any arms and fight, you have the double battle. One is against autocracy, and you have to defend your country against the raider. That rectified the atmosphere. We gave a call for 20,000 volunteers. Very first night and next morning. But then we had about 10,000 recruits, people who came to enlist. So the first group of scouts who did the recon went right up to Baramulla and came back, spread in the villages. We had people ready who did it. Some of them were ex-soldiers. And in that attempt, in fact, first batch that got killed was about 7 persons who were killed by mistake. That's what our investigation showed, that there was no dead body in Srinagar itself.
This was just, I've read the accounts of this. This was in a clash with the Sikh regiment. They were a patrol of volunteers.
There was no clash.
They were mistaken for raiders.
They actually, the mistake was on our part that they wanted to go and meet this. Some of them were from the same Sikh battalion, 4th. And so they wanted to meet their old camp, thinking that they would just walk in. But they had their password, their things, so when they reached there, they thought there is, and they killed them and left the bodies there. There was a group of, Pak spies and activists who were for Pak. There was a good number. So they took up these bodies as to demonstrate as well, look, this is Indian Army's atrocities. And they took the procession. You've been to Srinagar from Rambagh down. So I was asked to handle the thing. So I said nothing doing. No arms should be used. We must solve the position gradually, make them honor. Because they were, and all of them were very important people. Workers, well-known workers. One was from a family whose 3 sons had been killed in the National Conference movement, and this was his 3rd son getting killed. So they came to our headquarters, but happily no clash took place there. We went there, and after about 100 meters at Mysuma, we were able to persuade them to hand over the bodies. And those bodies were handed over. We got an assurance from General Kulwant Singh, who was in charge of the expedition campaign against Pakistan raiders, that there will be proper investigation and people will be punished. But in haste, we buried all of them, including Pandits. 2 of them were Pandits. And in fact, I have been trying horse. Nobody now talks about the sacrifices made by militia. About 42 of them died fighting. More than
42? So they took up arms, they fought?
Yeah, at a number of places. So one of them was almost, in fact, I see when the liberation of Baramulla took place, there were no reserves within the army. People who discussed where Nehru let down and there was no orders for an offensive beyond Uri. One reason is Indian Army had no reserves left. And so I was asked to, because there was a report that there was fresh infiltration from south, from Titwal area. And I took 2 companies and 1 police company also.
This is after the Indian Army had entered Baramulla?
Yeah, after they had liberated Baramulla. And so we did encounter some, but there's no big infiltration. We caught about 32 raiders. Some of them were killed in skirmishes. We didn't have very big encounter with the enemy. But one sector, that is Haigam sector, we found that there was a big group, about 250 of them, who were encamped there.
Which sector?
Haigam, that's known as in this very south of Kashmir. That is called Lolab side.
So you used a rifle? You held a rifle?
What we did was, you see, we were 4 of us. Myself, there's 3 more. 2 of them are dead now. One became a minister in the Noor Muhammad, and 3rd was who became Deputy Chief of Staff of Indian Army. I forget the names, I've become too old now. Then the 4th got killed in Titwal Pali. He joined the regular force later when we resigned. This is Pushkar Zawdu. And we were 4 of us to go to investigate whether this report was correct, because this police company came running away, that huge force has entered Haigam. So I got them back to the barracks because they created panic, and there was no sign that they had done any fighting anywhere. And at the head of the police force was one who was of my grandfather's size. So I took out his belt and put him in the lockup. And we went to investigate, and we found the report was correct, but there's no attack which the police company reported.
And you had weapons?
We had weapons, rifles. All of us had rifles.
Had you ever been trained to use a rifle?
Trained, very quick training. Yeah, we learned while fighting. Most, 3 basic things. That is, attack and encounter. Then what they call in army attack and encounter. Second, how to throw a grenade, how to march, basic small things. And we went to Haigam to investigate, but when we heard the report that this was the thing, this was about 10 miles away where they were camping. So what we did was we took the villagers along with us. While crossing those 10 villages, we took all the villagers. Some of them we forced and asked them to raise slogans. With the result, we gave the impression to them that a huge army backed by people is coming. We didn't let them know. Then we went on negotiating with them. And by about 3 o'clock, the person who was negotiating was their own man, but they had sided with us. He was a, very well-known smuggler who used to operate right up to the frontier. But he behaved well. He kept his word. And he finally got their surrender. So they agreed to surrender. They surrendered their weapons. We let them out. But we got the weapons and the ammunition. It's very sizable. 250 rifles, some 3 machine guns, hundreds of grenades and things like that. And we only, as a mark of remembrance, we said, one of you has to come with us. So we got the deputy commandant. I forgot his name. This was the one who led them was Major Amanullah. I remember.
So these were mainly Pathans?
No, we call them Khar Pathans. They are Pathans, but semi-Pathans. With some of them, on the border you find these Pathans, Kashmiri Pathans. So that's how they were billeted there.
So they're from Hazara?
Yeah, mostly from Hazara. They're not they're not part of the regular force that had invaded. But they went back.
And when you got into Baramulla, how many days was that after the liberation?
The next day, very next day.
How did you travel?
By bus. We had our own, with the militia, 2 buses. That was, somehow we had retained them. And by then the Indian Army had got its own vehicles. But we traveled in a bus of our own.
What was Baramulla like?
Oh, it was desolate, burned, half-burned. No, not a soul. Baramulla used to be a bustling town, very beautiful town, especially because of the St. Joseph College. It was very well known. And the trading center, fruit used to be exported from there. So all that had changed. There was all this anywhere. I found that there were 2, they had victimized, and they had identified 2 victims. One was known as Balwala copper, then another was simple copper. Balwala copper suffered most, that is Sardar 6. And I remember we were told, maybe that was an exaggeration, that about 300 girls and women, Sikh women and other Hindu women, committed suicide by jumping into the Jhelum from the bridge, Baramulla bridge. There are many such pathetic reports. Incidentally, I must tell you, and during this, our operations in the south, when we were pursuing this, and fresh infiltrators, we went to a place, our headquarters at Handwara, and we were told one night, a village some 10 or 12 kilometers away from Handwara town. Late in the night, 2 people came to persuade us to take away 6 whom they had protected. So we went them, after ascertaining that it was not a trap, we went with this old man, thinking that it would be a group of 10 or 26. Imagine 500 families of 6 women, children, and they had sent them deep into the mountains. And they're keeping a relay, sending food, everything, but not a soul disclosed that these Sikh families were there. And you should have, I still remember that scene. When they were coming, and we took them back. And their ponies, everything, the way these Sikh women, old men were kissing the feet of villagers, crying openly that have to express their, gratefulness to them for having protected them, the women and children. And we also had both the things where there are some who had collaborated with the enemy, and killed people, and also looted property. Looted property was sizable. And in Handwara sector, we collected quite a bit, got it back. And wherever the looted people were living, we returned it to them. And there are some families who had come all the way from Hazara, from Hindu families, before just during the Partition massacres, to seek shelter in Kashmir, Hindu families. Some of them had got again trapped in Handwara. There were trade links with this region, thinking that they would be peaceful, but they were overtaken by this and couldn't leave. So we rescued them. I remember about 5 families. One family was 3 girls, 2 boys, but their parents had been killed. But their kids were protected, saved by local Muslims. And we rescued them from one Muslim family.
And in Baramulla, what had happened to the Hindu and Sikh women there?
You've seen that hospital where the whole that thing took place. But down below, a few hundred yards away, there was on the right side of the road, there was a police station, which was used as a police station. And we went there, which was no longer a police station. It was stinking with septic things. The women who had been slit right in the middle. I mean, they're like birds and animals. They'd rape them. Then after the rape, they would slit their body.
Is it Sikh women or Pandit women?
Both Pandit. There were Pandit, and that place there were Pandit women. And some of them were quite young girls, but almost dying. We were able to rescue them, take them to Srinagar.
How many do you think were in the police station?
About 20, 22, 23, more than.
You saw them yourself?
Oh yes. In fact, we saw to it that they were put in the buses. They were sent back I remember, to army vehicles, and we took some in our own bus back to Srinagar. They were in the hospital. I don't know what happened, but obviously some of them did survive, or most of them.
And did you go to the hospital and convent?
Yeah, this Baramulla hospital. Oh yeah, it was a grim, very horrifying sight, and the way that killed the nuns. It was brutish. I mean, you can kill your enemies, but there is a way of basically. They were ruthless, not only ruthless, they were just brutal. Helpless women, and the women who serve people, who would serve them in a way to bring them back to health. And there should have been no provocation to anyone. When we talked to them, they would have served these Kabalis, raiders, if they had been injured. And one of them said that we tried to find out, initially we thought that they'd come for treatment, but then the whole thing happened. We also saw, hospital beds, and there was a college nearby. They had assembled all these beds. They were of iron steel beds. They were used to roast cows because that was their feed, and they caught cows. Then these toilet utensils they used to eat their food.
Chamber pots?
Yeah. There was still some rice lying, boiled rice lying in one of them.
Who went with you? Was Baba Bedi with you?
Mrs. Bedi, yes. Mrs. Bedi.
Frida?
Frida was there. Frida was everywhere. It was a wonderful woman.
What was your own feeling when you saw Baramulla?
Anger. I felt sort of, when I first saw, I said, how could a man do all this? It was not only the hospital, because hospital got into the news because of the atrocities. But when we went in the city, inner city, across the river, much worse things had happened. And especially the main victims were women. Everywhere the same tale. They had cut off ears, cut off noses, cut off wrists, just because they were in a hurry to take away the gold, thinking that they were wearing gold and all that. They took samovars, this where we boil the tea, the contraptions. The body samovar was missing. But worse was with the women and kids, children.
Did they also attack Muslim women?
Yeah, Muslim women. In fact, interesting thing is the family who had all along been great supporters of Jinnah. I don't want to name the family. Everybody knows about it.
Is this in the Kukru family?
Yeah. They were very happy to see that Pakistan had sent liberators. But the first victim of these liberators were Kukru family because they invited their commanders and others for a huge dinner. And after the dinner, they entered their zanana, that is the women's section, and did worse things. In fact, till today they don't talk about it. They looted them, they raped their women, I should say. And that's how it's. In fact, that was the start of their campaign. Kukrus suffered that. But they still retain their pro-Pak. Because they couldn't do otherwise. And Kukrus were always in the forefront. It was the one family that stood by Pakistan. When Jinnah came in 44, that was the only family we came out to receive Jinnah when he was leaving. Jinnah went in under an escort, state escort. And in Baramulla he was given a, what do you call it? He was garlanded with shoes. And the popular discard was slogans against him.
Did you know Maqbul Sherwani?
Oh yes, yeah. We're together in prison instantly, in the same barrack. Maqbul was very good, very stout. And he was not liked by these feudal families, the Kukrus and others. They hated him. One reason they saw to it that he is killed is the reason that he was against his family, against that anti-front.
He seems to have been a bit of a reckless guy, a bit of a rogue.
Adventurer. No, not rogue. He was a very nice person. In fact, there was a list of 22 volunteers which we framed that evening to go behind the enemy lines. He was one of them. But being an adventurous and a bit showy, that here I am going, he held public meetings to village, and rode into the enemy on a motorbike. That motorbike undid him. The rest of them did cooperate when alive. They were there till the end of the campaign. And that was very useful, the network they built up of the country.
Was Maqbul Sherwani the only one to die?
Yeah, he was the only one from that group. But the other people died. They died in the first onrush of raiders. In Muzaffarabad, there was Master Abdulaziz. There was one boy who was in the customs department. And he had been from our group in student. He was a student. But that that commitment was there with him while he was working in the customs department. And he gave shelter to Hindus, a group of Hindus, and he was killed because he had given shelter to.
But the volunteers and then the militia, they were strongest in Srinagar?
Stronger in Srinagar.
Did you have many members outside?
Yeah, in all the seals. In fact, the first encounter that took place between India and which Major Samlanda, there was parallel in what that place, the airport. Action was our company, headed by R.C. Raina and Ghulam Ahmad Malik. And the one is dead. R.C. Raina became the PA to Sheikh later. And they did better than the Indian Army, and because they knew the local conditions. What they did was, they asked villagers, they got help from villages and inundated the whole area with the water. So it was very difficult because the type of soil you have on that area is muddy. So putting more water, it was difficult for, any force to make an advance. But Indian Army Company did not take at that moment our help in that skirmish. In fact, they had been briefed by somebody who gave them the address of an officer who was in the police, Kashmir police, but whose family was well-known pro-Pak. So we had warned them that be careful about this, but they didn't accept it. Because the propaganda was that there is a communist army. And we had no such program or no such instructions to indulge in communist revolution.
But were many of the leading people in the militia communists?
Almost all. All the leading people. No, there were quite a sizable group of people who were not communists. In fact, one of them was an important commander, Major Afzal. He was an anti-communist, but at the personal level, very good relations. Because we didn't introduce anything of communism or communist education, except that literacy program was a must. We had two types of command, what was known as political command and the military command. Political command did not mean communist education, but it meant literacy plus the history of freedom struggle in Jammu and Kashmir, the issues of Jammu and Kashmir and so on.
When you were in Srinagar, you must have... Did you feel that the city might fall?
No, not at all. Well, I might tell you, there was a controversy which was very unfortunate between the army command, that is Bogisan, decided to withdraw. And his approach, his assessment was that enemy was converging on the airport and they will take over the airport and then there is no, our supply route will end. So he decided, he said that the army should withdraw to Pampur. That was on a day when all over the city everybody was marching, Hamla Avar Khabardar, Hum Kashmiri Hai Tayar. And it would have been such a grave tragedy, that leaving people at the mercy of raiders, that you allow raiders to enter, it would have been a mass massacre, especially of the minorities. And minorities were happy. There were marriages taking place because of the Muslims around them, and every mohalla had a unit of the peace guard, that is home guard. Plus there was more important is a Bal Sena, children's, they were doing much more good work with kids than anyone else. And so we said nothing doing. Our assessment was different. And our assessment, because we felt that the enemy was, coming from three sides. One was the downtown area. then from the main road and the airport side. Bogisan's assessment was the conversion. Our assessment was based on a very solid intelligence that they will converge on the main road and make a thrust. How we got this information was that, if you've been to Srinagar, we have a thing called baths. There's one Dunga, there is Shikara, and then there is Dunga, a bigger size boat. Then there is a bigger size boat called baths, which are used as goods carriers. Who would say? There are ample space to, you can accommodate even 200 people, 100 people easily. And there's a cover, good cover. So these boats used to be moored near Shalting, that's the extreme. And they're on this side of the river, that's on city side. But our report came that suddenly they had changed their position to the other side. That is the side from where the enemy was coming. And we got the intelligence that they had been bribed or given money to change out, and that guests will come and they had to get the guests to this side. So we found that these guests were none other than we got 32 people arrested that night in operation, and from their interrogation we found that yes, this whole thing was. So what we did was we put our militia members on guard throughout those day and night duty. After every 100 meters at unit to be on guard of the riverfront from the higher, that is Dudhganga side, down up to below Shalatek. And lo and behold, what we did was, the same thing happened, they converged not towards the airport, finally they converged on the main road, thinking that these bus boats will be ready so that they go into them and come to the other side quietly of the city. But in the meanwhile, we had ordered all these boats to ship back to them. So these boats, sorry, I got some problem. They are not available to them. That proved decisive. And finally, we protested with this whole night, I remember. And the matter was even went right up to Jawaharlal Nehru about this withdrawal. General Kulwant Singh did not agree finally. He said, no, nothing doing. This report.
And how long did the militia stay in existence for?
Militia began in October and 48.
And there were women?
There was a separate women's brigade. I'll show you some of the literature from that side. And we had about 20,000 members on the optional list. But actually, those who were operating were more than 10,000. And women did good, commendable work on the side of relief and other help. They did a lot of work. In fact, one of them is here, who is now a retired person. She became principal. Mahmouda, she's still living. She's in Jammu, who was the head of the organization. One of the other a woman who was heading this women's brigade, was Sadiq's sister. She's also dead. And there's yet another Usha, who is now in Bombay. Quite a few. There was one group of sisters called Lakwara Sister. They did a lot. Then there was one working woman, ordinary in the sense, she was a milkmaid, a famous woman called Zuni. She was alive, mobilizing women everywhere she was. and a terror for that were fascinating days. In fact, I have been crying hoarse that this is one force who should be treated as freedom fighters, and their families should be taken care of. Some of them, nobody looks after them. Last year I presented a memorandum to the president. He just kept it. No, he hadn't even the courtesy to respond. But I intend to organize an exhibition of documents of that period to tell the people that there was something like this. And also the martyrs who all were, where they died, how did they die.
When did you see Sheikh Abdullah after the raiders were in retreat?
That was almost a Delhi, not Delhi exactly, but it was just a mile or a quarter of a mile distance. They had their headquarters in Rajana Hotel, that is, you have seen the Nedo's Hotel. It's just adjacent to it. That was the headquarters of the emergency admission where Sheikh used to be. Our headquarters was first in a hotel called, you see Palladium Cinema, just adjoining it is a hotel, a guest house, that used to be called a Kashmir guest house. That was our headquarters first. Then we shifted to exhibition grounds when the war began.
I thought the Palladium was actually your headquarters.
Yeah. Palladium was, no, there were two wings. One was, as I told you, peace maintenance, that is Home Guard. The other was National Militia, which was an armed wing. Home Guard was also partially armed, but they had mostly dandas. But we had armory, huge armory, we had regular army type.
Am I delaying your dinner?
My granddaughter, Rahat, come.
I'm just pausing for a second. And were you around when Sheikh Abdullah was sworn in as head of the emergency administration?
Yeah. In fact, we had much to do in choosing who should be what in the administration, emergency administration. Of course, we couldn't tell Sheikh that you ought to be this, but rest of the things. There was one, instantly, a defense minister or defense in charge, which was significant because you don't have a separate defense minister or administrator. But we had a defense administrator. Now Sadiq was one.
And were these communists?
Sadiq was, yes, pro-communist.
And the communists were quite clearly pro-India at this stage?
Yeah. There was no question. Because on this issue, actually, Communist Party of India was, I should say, clear at that point. In fact, it was more because of one P.C. Joshi, who was the General Secretary. Then came the other phase, that's BT. And P.C. Joshi sent a letter. I still remember it was a 2-page letter typed on this paper, very thin paper. And it was a mandate for the communists that, and I remember the title was All for the Defense of Motherland. So it was a mandate that every communist must take to arms and defend. But Pakistan Communist Party had a different approach. I mean, they were equally keen to liberate Kashmir. In fact, there was one Latif Afghani who was in Srinagar till 46. This was an Afghan family who had been banished from Kabul when Britishers went. And he was one of the progeny of that. He had become a communist. And they had shifted from Madras to Srinagar. So he had joined one of these groups, these raider groups, in the hope of saving us when the raiders entered. So he sent a message that don't worry, I will see to it that you are saved. So that was one. But officially, the Pakistani Communist Party, of course, not that they were supportive of raiders, but they went with General Abdul Khan and others.
So, but you're saying there was at least one communist among the raiders?
Yeah, Latif Afghani was. But equally, we had the leader on our side. In fact, the first appeal made to raiders not to proceed with their attack was from the Radio Kashmir. Radio Kashmir was set up then, during that period, was from the head of the Muslim National Guard, that is Captain, I talked to you about Captain Anwar, who told them that this is your protest effort. There's no enemy on this side. In fact, here is the real freedom struggle, and you withdraw. Plus, he talked of the Western support, Western intrigue behind the thing.
What did people in Srinagar feel when the Maharaja left?
Well, this is precisely when, what happened was emergency, after the whole emergency was over, after the raiders were thrown out and down up to Uri. Then Maharaja, who was actually, his regime was dead, he tried to reassert with Mr. Mahajan as his Prime Minister. And he wanted to dissolve, he in fact did it. He dissolved the emergency administration, reasserted his, and then said that I'll take one or two popular ministers. That was, he was going back to the diarchy period and thinking that nothing had changed for him. He ran away from Kashmir, whatever people might say, he ran away during the dead of night. And so did these RSS thugs. One Balraj Madhok, who ran in a mule truck, ran away along with this one. And today he talks, oh, he did this. I wish those... Anyway. And when he tried to reassert, that was reversing the whole thing. It came as a rude shock. And Sheikh was very much upset. There were, of course, negotiations on that this should not happen. So militia we declared, in fact, people don't talk of this, that unless Maharaja Hari Singh abdicates and gives power fully into the hands of people's representatives, militia would not go back to barracks. So we held demonstrations all over the valley, wherever our units were. They went out with arms and demonstrated, and with the slogan, Maharaja Hari Singh das bardar, Qaumi Fauj hai tayar. That meant that Maharaja Hari Singh, you would abdicate, the national militia is ready otherwise. I think it had its effect. But we were arrested, the leaders of the militia, and court-martialed. And 10 of us were sentenced, in fact. But that went on, it was whole one-night affair. And those who had come from district, because we all asked all our units to converge on Srinagar. And when they came marching with these slogans. So that created a strange atmosphere. And that was, Indian Army was there. And by that time, Indian Army, the move was there to absorb the militia into the army. So that hastened there. But
so when was that then?
That was, I think, 48.
And was the militia absorbed into the army?
I wouldn't remember the exact dates.
But it happened at some stage that the militia was absorbed.
Yeah. And we were asked then to make the choice, to get into the army, regular army, or leave. So that is how this court-martial thing didn't work. But we refused. We said, because the oath was that we will remain loyal to Maharaja. It was still the Maharaja's army. I said no. In fact, one by one, those who did not take the oath, official oath, were asked to quit, leave. So that's how we left the militia. And that came, its popular role as such came to an end from our viewpoint.
And you eventually then moved into journalism as a career?
No, I went back to a national conference, but was a whole-time political activist. And I went back to trade union work. In fact, there was a mushroom growth of trade union because of the huge expectations. Even those who were grass hoopers, you see, those who cut grass, they formed a union. Everybody who was a working person formed a union. And I remember our first thrust was in Baramulla. There was a match factory, matchboxer, which was a forbidden area because this was owned by a person who was close to Nehru. So I was invited to visit that place as organizer of the Central Trade Union. And when I went there, I thought it was an ordinary visit. You know, you are invited by trade unions, come and see. But they knew what they were doing. When I went inside, though I saw mostly children as labor and small kids. But while I was going from barrack to barrack, every child had his hands behind his back. First I didn't notice, I thought probably it was just, we have a respectful way of looking with their hands tied behind your back. But then I felt that there was something wrong with this type of posture. So I asked one, why with your hands? Take them out. He hesitated for a moment, and he was looking towards the manager who was going around with me. Then I forced him, and I saw the fingers were non-existent. I found everybody's fingers were non. I couldn't resist. I said, what is this? There's self-literature. They used to make them work with naked hands. And that's how these fingers hit. So I couldn't hold myself. I blabbered this manager fellow. Started with a slap. I put it down and said, did you have your own child? If you have, would you do the same thing with? So I came back running here to Srinagar. A minister in charge was Ghulam Sadiq. I said, here is this thing. And on behalf of the trade unions, that is Central Labour Union, it was called, I have come with a mandate to tell you that within 24 hours this unit must be taken over by the government or there will be a general strike. He was furious. He said, nothing doing. And even Sheikh, because how can I do this? If this fellow is close, some relation of Nehru. I said, precisely because of that, this. But that unit was taken over after a month and things improved. They got relief, they got something. So that gave a signal to the labor on that entire side. In agricultural labor, there's a place called Duabaga. Some 20,000 invited me, who were laborers who were working there, to form their union. And the unions went on right up to Uri. So that is how the clash with National Congress leadership came between us and Sheikh. And that was the period the disillusionment started. Because what happened was, it's bunkum that there was pro-Pak feeling. But pro-Pak feeling was deliberately created. You see, with our absence in the militia, the organization, especially National Organization, the city which was previously under our control, a network of cadre was provided by us. So there was, by and large, it was a very good self-sacrificing image of a political worker that people in the city had about the national government. But after our absence, the traditional worker came and he became the ruler. So any dissent in the locality, he would describe that you are a Pakistani spy. And some of them used to have warrant of arrest in their pockets. And then they would call them that you have you are working for Pakistan. And this became a rule everywhere. There's corruption, they forced divorces, they did everything possible. And there was widespread resentment. We protested against this. In fact, we then confined to these trade unions. And these trade unions were also parallel organizational units in the localities, mohallas. Because, for instance, vegetable growers were there. We call them, they're everywhere in all the localities. So we formed groups of them which became parallel units running against this corrupt national government. So there was a direct clash with Sheikh because Sheikh had to depend on them. And there was one instance of, there was almost a condition of famine those days. That was 48. I remember there was, the average Kashmiri was accustomed to eating rice at the rate of ₹5. Local, you see, measure is car, that is 2.5 months. Now suddenly he finds it soaring up price to 60 rupees. Oh, the average artisans, laborers, they couldn't afford all this. Then similar thing happened with vegetables because one of the brothers of Home Minister had monopolized all the supplies, vegetables, and he became a supplier to the army. So the prices soared up. Now, all these combined plus repression plus this, the local worker, national government worker turning himself into a Iranist dictator at the local level, and corrupt one. There were even reports of rapes, forcible divorces, arranging one marriage with the other, you divorce her, she gets married to another, all week. So there was an upheaval of resentment. And Sheikh was aware of it, but he wouldn't change. Because Bakshi was connected with this network. And he thought that the communists would gain the upper hand if he corrected it. We had the last meeting with him. He invited me because there was this Baramala thing. To cut the long story short. So there was finally a negotiation, a sort of talks called us for discussion to decide which one. And instantly B.P.L. Bedi was present at it. So there was this muddy chalet where I had brought it out, that 62,000 mans of food grains, paddy, was taken out of garment stores during the dead of night and sold at a higher rate by 3 brothers of the 3 top ministers, Sheikh's elder brother, Bakshi's elder brother, and Beg's elder brother. So this became a very notorious scandal. And I brought it out in a paper called Nahila. I had no paper, but I borrowed it that day from a friend of mine who was a publisher of 2 papers. And I exposed the whole scandal. That paper, single copy those days, sold for 10,000 in the city of Srinagar, and each one copy sold for 10 rupees because they were wanting today. So that angered Sheikh. So he called us at this, either you choose me or you choose your path. So we tried to explain to him, look, your feet are in dust. I remember having told him. And mind you, Bedi was a good friend, very close friend of Sheikh. He supported us. So we're not even enemies. We want while discussing, he said, I have enemies to face. He even said, India is my enemy. There's Patel, intriguing. There's Pakistan, he said, everybody, China, America, this, that. I said, you have all these enemies, yes? So how do you fight them? You can't fight them with your feet in the dust. You have to put them, we want to put them in state. And your state is people, if they get away from you, if they get disillusioned the way it's happening. So the best thing is to correct it. what to do? And everybody said that you have to sacrifice Bakshigala because all this won't happen unless he said, I can't cut my bazuban, that is my arms. I can cut your bazu. So you have to decide whether to stay with me. Then we sort of came to the conclusion that this thing won't change unless we formed an opposition party. And there was good response from within the national people who were prepared to resign, the main leadership. And a big scale, and one of the leaders whose statue was next to Sheikh, Ismail Kara, he was prepared to join us. So three of us came here to Delhi to talk to central leader, to Nehru. Nehru refused to even meet us. And then we talked to communist leaders. They were busy with their own revolution those days. So while we were trying, I told you about my arrest. So I was arrested. They went back, and then the whole thing fizzled out.
And when did you leave the Communist Party?
In 49. I didn't leave. I have never left Communist Party, but I resigned officially. Because I came to the conclusion that they were not serious about building up a movement there. And the type of movement they wanted I was not for it. Ideologically, I gave up Communist Party when I went abroad. I was for 3 years in the visiting Czechoslovakia, all these USSR, China. I got disillusioned. In fact, I was the first to know about the Stalinist atrocities. And I had the first, that's a different chapter altogether.
And then how long did you live in Srinagar? When did you leave Srinagar?
I left Srinagar, no. I came back from China in 57, 56. Got married, stayed for some time in Delhi, and worked as a journalist. Then I decided to work as a journalist because there is no impetus, the moral and other impetus to work for Communist Party. But I didn't leave Communist friends. I did intervene, I did take part. But it was a sort of a struggle going there, going away. The more I wanted to be with part of them, the more I felt I was running away from them. Going up. It didn't appeal to me. It still doesn't appeal, no longer appeals to me that you talk of some dictatorship of the proletariat. It's a dictatorship of all. And communists have to think why, in the name of communism, you have to kill millions. That's what is the history of USSR. Collectivization, massacres. And mind you, my own assessment is the communist regime, USSR, fell not because so much of Western intrigues, though they were American, CIA, or whatever you want to call it. But it fell because of the internal resistance. The communist resistance by good, well-meaning persons who were communists. And my own assessment is about more than 2 lakh communists who were some of the best generals died fighting Stalin in the. Nobody talks of this. Nobody tries to find out how strong was the resistance with them. And in fact, that gave me hope, that kept me still, that there is something in common. Because they reacted and fought back, prepared to get liquidated or killed or whatever. You know these methods, horrifying methods, but people have yet to talk about. You see, turning, this psychological treatment. It's horrifying. It's worse than archipelago or things, or these camps and other things, or mass killings. You treated a opposition like mental cases and send them literally to mental hospitals.
But in spite of the fact that your views have changed,
Yeah.
are you proud of what you did as a communist when you were a young man in Srinagar?
I'm still proud. because it had not so much to do with communism alone. I was led to communism because of my firm conviction that, even today also, that there is no escape from working for the poor to uplift them. Of course, now there are a number of other ways. And it was a question of getting freedom from the British. So anything that put my emotion more sharply, and communism probably those days was the best.